We want to bring in NBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. NBC's Monica Alba is covering the White House for us this morning. Rob D'Amico is a former FBI supervisor as well as an MSNBC national security intelligence analyst. Jamil Jaffer is founder and executive director of the National Security Institute. And Paul Butler is here with me. He's a former federal prosecutor and, of course, MSNBC legal analyst. Ken, I want to start with you. I mean, you're out there. What do we know about exactly what's happening on the ground?
Well, Christina, what we know is what we've seen, which is FBI agents and FBI windbreakers and FBI polos going in and out of the house, bringing boxes inside the house, rearranging their unmarked vehicles. You see behind me there are around 4 or 5 unmarked FBI vehicles in the driveway. They pulled an SUV up to the garage. We have not seen anybody that lives there. We don't think. Ambassador Bolton is not at home. We know that the FBI has been here since 7 in the morning, so they are pouring through material in the house. And typically in these kinds of searches, you have FBI agents, including perhaps the case agent, in charge of the investigation, and also evidence technicians who are expert in searching and exploiting evidence. They would normally seize digital devices and also papers. And look, the context here is really important. Number one, in order for the FBI to have gotten sign-off on this search, they had to convince a magistrate judge that there was probable cause to believe that there was evidence of a crime in this house. And this has to be fresh evidence, not years-old evidence related to Ambassador Bolton's book, which, you know, he wrote a book that was criticized about the Trump administration. But secondly, this is coming in an atmosphere where the FBI has been increasingly politicized. John Bolton is an ardent critic of Donald Trump. And just a few days ago, FBI Director Kash Patel gave an interview where he talked about the Mar-a-Lago search of Donald Trump's home, where he said there was no predicate for that was an illegal search. The time he gave that interview, he must have known that this search was coming. These things take many weeks to plan normally. So a host of questions are raised here. Eventually, we will see the affidavit of probable cause that justified this search, and we'll know more about what exactly this is about. But right now, it's a mystery. Christina.
And Rob, I want to ask you, I mean, you heard Ken talk about the fact that the FBI most likely had to go in front of a magistrate and get permission for this search. What jumps out about you about the way this was carried out? And do you think they're likely to find something if they got permission to look in the first place?
Well, you never know what you're going to find. But as Ken said, this evidence can't be from 4 or 5 years ago. You have to convince that it's there now. You have to tell the judge some type of fresh evidence. And it's not, quote, stale. So something had to happen within reason amount of time for the judge to do this. But when you look at the execution of the search warrant, they probably were surveilling the house last night. There was a decision made probably to not have him at the house when the people during the search warrant at the residence went there, because they probably saw him leave, followed him to his office in D.C., conducted the search warrant, and then they also knew that a follow-on search warrant was going to be done at the office. And in that case, if Mr. Bolton was in that office and he went into that office and the FBI was still not doing a raid, they would want to have eyes on him in the office to ensure that he didn't go in and bring something out and get rid of something. So again, an active surveillance so that when they saw that he got there, that he didn't have the chance to bring something out and get rid of it before the search warrant at his office took place. So all that in the execution was going on probably from a command and control, either at Washington field office or FBI headquarters.
Jamil, I also want to ask you about what the president just said in that quote that we played. He said that he's the chief law enforcement officer. The president is the commander-in-chief, but the chief law enforcement officer is supposed to be the attorney general. That's Pam Bondi. What is your reaction to the fact that the president seems to view himself as the chief law enforcer of the nation?
Well, look, as a general matter, you're exactly right. The attorney general is viewed as the chief law enforcement officer of the nation. I think what the president was trying to say there, you know, in Donald Trump words, is that, you know, he has the ability to interpret the law authoritatively for the executive branch. We've seen prior presidents assert that authority, sometimes override the attorney general. It's not often. It happens once in a rare while. But President Trump also said something interesting, which is he said, look, I don't think it's a good idea for me to be involved in these investigations. He's right about that. That's not normally the role the president plays. There's typically a strong effort to avoid any influence and involvement in the Justice Department. We've seen more of that in this administration than perhaps others. There have been accusations made by this administration that the prior administration also did similar things, got the Justice Department involved politically. Of course, if you don't want weaponization, you don't want politicization, calling people names and going after, even conducting search warrants against people that are viewed as your political rivals or adversaries or enemies, that can be dangerous. It happened in the last administration. This administration was critical of it when they were running for re-election. They've been critical of it since. Doing it now raises the same sort of concerns, and they know that. And so the question becomes, what will come of this? Will they actually find something that demonstrates there was actually a crime here?
Paul, what does it take to get a warrant like this? And does it imply that they have some sort of new information, new charges they're looking for? Or could they use information from when this was an investigation back in the Biden administration and just decide to try to do the search now?
So probable cause is the standard under the Fourth Amendment, which means that federal agents would have had to go to a federal judicial officer, a magistrate, and persuade him or her that there's probable cause that a crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is at Mr. Bolton's house. And if it's true as reported that his office is being searched now, they would have had to go to a different judicial officer in Washington, D.C., and persuade that person also that there was probable cause.
Because it's two different jurisdictions.
Yes, okay. So that there was probable cause that a crime has been committed and that there's probable cause that evidence of that crime would be at Mr. Bolton's home and his office.
Is there an expiration on that probable cause, though? Can they use the probable cause from months ago, or do they have to prove that they've come up with something new?
So the legal doctrine is called staleness. If information that's provided to a judge is too old to make it relevant now, then the judge would have to deny it. So there are questions about statute of limitations. So Mr. Bolton was investigated by the FBI during President Trump's first administration, and that investigation was reportedly dropped by the Biden administration's attorney general.
Right.
If it's 5 years old, it's stale, so any magistrate would require new evidence of a more recent criminal activity in order to issue this warrant. The other important issue here, Christina, very quickly, is in previous administrations, because this is a high-profile case involving national security, the National Security Division of the Department of Justice would also have to approve this warrant. We know that President Trump has changed a lot of those safeguards to make it easier for the Attorney General to bring cases just based on her own assessment. So we don't know if that traditional safeguard of having experienced lawyers in national security approve this warrant. We don't know if that procedure was followed.
Oh, so that's
here.
interesting. So they might have gone ahead without that stamp this time around. Jamil, I also want to ask you, when they say this is a national security investigation in search of classified records, and that, they're looking into multiple instances of use of classified documents, leaks to the media, what do you draw from that? Do you think that means that they think or have some sort of evidence that Bolton will have proof of these documents or the documents themselves in his home or office?
Well, that's presumably what they're looking for is that he has either disclosed classified information or he's in possession of it unlawfully. His security clearance, as you know, was revoked by President Trump. So if he did, even if he didn't have even if he had a security clearance, you're not authorized to have classified information in places not allowed to store it. A home is not an authorized place, as we learned in the Mar-a-Lago raid, particularly for materials that are above the top secret or sensitive compartmented information level. You need a safe, you need a secure facility, and for TSSCI material, you need a secure compartmented information facility, a SCIF. And so Paul's exactly right as well on this issue of the National Security Division. I served in the National Security Division when I was at the Justice Department, and he's right that you have to get approvals across the department. The administration can change those rules, though. Internally, the Attorney General can decide that she can authorize it on her own merits or remove those protections that are in place. So changes have been made. We don't know the full scope of those, but Paul's right to raise that question as well.